Beautiful day in Galveston. There's no sense waiting for perfect conditions. They will never occur. There will always be birds, planes, helicopters, screaming people. Yeah, even the help's making noise. It's crazy. Vehicles, the beach, the wind. So just deal with it. The gap is closing between alt media and mainstream media. More and more we are seeing in mainstream media the very themes, the very ideas and concepts that many people like myself, David Icke, several other, lesser known personalities were all bringing to the table before. I'm pretty sure David Icke is 20, 25, 30 years into the past, but he was a trailblazer, and he has every right to say, "I told you so." And I know things that I've brought to the public's attention in the past five and a half years since I set out on my mission to show simulation theory from the historical record. Many large mainstream channels are now borrowing into these concepts. Do they cite David Icke? Do they cite Archaix? Of course not. They're not communicating to our communities. They're communicating to their communities, and there's a difference. Because we're talking about the collective, we're talking about mainstream, we're talking about people who have a inability to think for themselves, so the government and the government's lackeys think for them. But it's very interesting to me that now simulation theory is being talked about a lot in mainstream. Now, theoretical physicists and mathematicians have long been proposing that we are living in a mathematical construct. But to see it in mainstream now is very interesting. I find all that pretty cool. But it shows that the gap is closing between mainstream and alt media, and not just on simulation theory, but on many other fronts. Even talking about a coming reset, a coming Planet X. Some people, they paint it in solar minimum, solar maximum, solar flare activity, X flare activity. Some people like Ben David and Suspicious Observers, using all NASA data, is talking about the closure of the 12,000 year cycle, which I think is total BS. But since 2006, I've been widely publicized about, I have never changed the date, May 2040, for the return of the Phoenix phenomenon, and the Nemesis X object for 2046 in the month of November. I've never needed to change those things. All I've done is add more and more information to the table. But it's very interesting that simulation theory is on the table. It's very interesting that a coming reset, a coming cataclysm is all on the table. And not just the alt media, the mainstream. But it's made me to think a little bit deeper onto what's really happening. And I don't know why lately Gaia has been on my mind. They really aren't. They're really inconsequential to me. I don't care about the Gaia yoga and self-help, and I don't care about all that stuff. But when Gaia tries to put itself into the position of someone who is going to be teaching the public anything about history, I have a real serious issue with that. So I got to thinking about it, like analyzing something from a photo-negative perspective. I got to thinking about Gaia. I was like, you know what? What exactly is happening here? They're huge. They're the mainstream of the truther community. I wouldn't even call them truthers. They've gone so far by the wayside. But it's very interesting to me what has happened to that community. So we know with Gaia, it's very interesting to me that you're not going to hear anything about Immanuel Velikovsky. Immanuel Velikovsky is not even on the table. Why? How was a trailblazer from the 1940s and 50s publishing books about worlds in collision, ages in chaos, Akhenaten and Moses? How is a man who has literally told us about how the year changed in 713 BC from 360 days to 365 days, how is his research absolutely, completely ignored by every single individual who is linked to Gaia? Is that a coincidence? Immanuel Velikovsky, without his material, you can't put much of the historical record back together. It's in too much disarray. And it's because of this hypervigilance we have in academia, this acute compartmentalization of all information, all data. So specialists, a multidisciplinary approach to history is almost impossible now because everybody has to stay within their own niche. This is the value of Archaix. I don't have anybody I answer to, so I'm able to pull in data from all the different disciplines. But the more I look into Gaia, I find out, wow, there is a massive corpus of data in Immanuel Velikovsky that has to be ignored in order to promote the things that Gaia promotes. Also, Thor Heyerdahl. How do you ignore all the books of Thor Heyerdahl? He was also a Sumerologist. The man published a lot of really interesting things about Sumer and the Sumerians, an ancient Heliolithic maritime empire, Easter Island. How is it that all these people that are in the Gaia network that are talking about Göbekli Tepe are ignoring Thor Heyerdahl? I don't get it. The link to Thor Heyerdahl is amazing because Thor Heyerdahl showed Easter Island, showed the dating, showed how they carved the Moya, the statues on Easter Island, the bird cult effigies, the pillars with the men with the folded long fingers. They're identical to what is found at Göbekli Tepe. But Gaia and its cronies that all worship Graham Hancock, who's still running from Archaix, by the way. Please forward that to Graham Hancock. Are putting this impossible ice age dating on these monuments when it's not even necessary. Everything about Göbekli Tepe, its effigies, its architecture, its statuary, its Kiva style architecture, every bit of it matches what we know of the goddess religions, the bull cult, the skull bearing religion, practices of the Huyuk sites. Everything matches 2600 to 2000 BC. You don't have to add 6, 7, and 8,000 years to this. It's not necessary. Immanuel Velikovsky and Thor Heyerdahl are completely ignored. Why? By Gaia. I don't get it. I just don't get it. One of my personal heroes, Professor L.A. Waddell. How do you ignore his research, his chronological material that shows that Menes was in the 19th century BC? And he shows it. He shows how all the Egyptian dynasties are convoluted. Professor Waddell realigns Sumerian history perfectly with Egyptian history, shows that the first 5 Egyptian dynasties were the first 5 Sumerian dynasties. All the names are the same. How do you ignore Professor Waddell? I know why. Immanuel Velikovsky, Thor Heyerdahl, Professor L.A. Waddell. I know why. Why? Because Gaia is promoting bullshit. There is no way they can cite these men and hold to the theories that they promote to the public today. It's not the only ones. What about H.S. Bellamy, who was a follower of Hans Boehringer? None of these men are cited. None of these men's research is quoted. Just don't get it. But you know who they do quote? You know who Gaia pushes? Eric von Daniken. Yeah, Ancient Aliens. Zechariah Sitchin. Yep. Completely contorted the chronology. Misinterpreted, probably intentionally, the entire Shar concept. Got Billy Carson, Michael Tellinger, and a whole bunch of other people all talking about Anunnaki living for hundreds of thousands of years. That's what Gaia promotes. Gaia promotes absolute BS, chronological anachronisms that can only be believed by those who are Facebook educated. When you reduce everything to the calendars and the way they were computed by our ancients, the day count system and the moon count system, everything fits within the historical record. But those who are in the Gaia network aren't promoting that. They're promoting the fantasy, not the facts. So they have to push von Daniken and ignore Immanuel Velikovsky. They have to push Zechariah Sitchin and ignore Thor Heyerdahl. They have to ignore Professor L.A. Waddell. They have to ignore Hans Bellamy, Hans Harberger. They have to ignore Harold T. Wilkins from the 1950s, who wrote of the Ogygian and the Great Flood and said it was the same mechanism. They have to ignore all this data. They have to practice exclusions in order to convey to you a fantastic Nickelodeon version of ancient history. Gaia is promoting Graham Hancock. They don't have to mention Graham Hancock's name. All they have to do is promote the same. When I say Graham Hancock, I'm talking about Andrew Collins, I'm talking about Robert Schoch, Robert Bauval. They're all the same group. Every single one of them. Yeah. You think I'm impressed with the geologist Robert Schoch because he claims that the Sphinx was 10,000 BC? Oh, that can be overturned. I'll debate that man any day of the week. I will tear apart every single one of those relative dating methods that he employed in the acquisition of his information. His theory is bogus. It's absolute trash, and in order to promote it, he has to ignore the historical record, where all of North Egypt was under the Mediterranean. He has to ignore all these references. He has to ignore all this actual facts about ancient Egypt and the Giza complex in order to promote such a bogus theory. And everybody jumped on his bandwagon. This whole Ice Age crap, followed by Randall Carlson and all of them, it's all BS. Vapor canopy cycles are what are being ignored in order, and this is what Ice Age covers up. It didn't just happen a long time ago. Vapor canopy cycles reoccur, and they change the world. You know what you're not going to hear about in Gaia, but you will in Archaix? When the whole world froze. How come they don't ever talk about that? Why don't they ever discuss why our fossil record shows every life form that's existing today has been flash frozen and found in the fossil record? And yet if this was 65 million years ago, how come there's been no transitional forms? Why do they look the exact same? And if the entire world flash froze all the way down to cephalopods and octopi and whole clam beds all at the bottom of the ocean, then how in the hell did anything survive on Earth? How are those same life forms still existing today? This is evidence of simulation theory, but it's not anything that Gaia is going to tell you about. But in Archaix, you can see hundreds of fossils. See all that. So the more I review the Gaia material, the more I see that it wants to paint itself as a truther venue. It wants to be an authority on things that were, not mainstream. It wants to paint himself, like the tactic that Graham Hancock employs. Here's a man that claims to be a victim that mainstream media is ignoring him. And yet he's got millions and millions of copies of all his books. He has a Netflix series. So we've already seen the same, we've seen the same play. We've already seen the same play. You already know what I'm talking about. It's so easy to cry victim when the exact opposite is the truth you're being promoted. Who was Graham Hancock but a sociologist who was an editor for a magazine? Yeah, happens to be a CIA-controlled magazine called The Economist. And then all of a sudden he writes a book, Fingerprints of the Gods, and all of a sudden he's God's truth to the truther community. Yeah, you gotta realize what's going on. So if Graham Hancock's material, and he's still running from a debate. So if Graham Hancock's material is created by an intelligence agency and handed to him by a deal, which is my theory, and that he just runs with the script because he's really not that knowledgeable, and all he's got to do is just show up with me in public anywhere, man, and one open dialogue on a microphone, and I'm going to be able to show the public real quick just the dearth of information that he actually doesn't possess. That's ironic, but still. It's gotten ludicrous, but it's very painfully obvious to me that Graham Hancock promotes uniformitarianism, and so does Gaia, and so does Robert Schoch and Robert Bauval, Andrew Collins. All of them are uniformitarians. You have to understand the entire history of the world. There's only two models. You're either a catastrophist or a uniformitarian. And lately there's been a bunch of uniformitarians in the past 30, 40 years that are trying to pretend to be catastrophists, but they're not. And it does matter. Because if you don't know the accurate history of the world, you don't know shit. As long as you don't know the history, you can't prepare for the future. Uniformitarianism is what's being promoted by Gaia. All these impossible ages, even the Ancient Aliens franchise and the Ancient Aliens enthusiasts in Gaia are also uniformitarians. They even misinterpret Berosus, and they misinterpret the Shar to be hundreds of thousands of days, like Billy Carson, Facebook educated ass, sitting there talking about Anunnaki were ruling, each king ruled for 48,000 years in the Sumerian king list. Man, he sit his ass down somewhere. You guys know. I don't have to beat you up with it. You already know the Shar count system is a day count system, and it makes all the chronology work. And you also know that it's not my discovery, that I've been pulling these gems from books that are hundreds of years old. It's another thing. That's another thing you won't find in Gaia. In Gaia, you find everybody promoted is an author of recent vintage following Graham Hancock. Yeah, Robert Bauval, Robert Schoch, Rand Flimath, Andrew Collins, Michael Tellinger. Yeah, all these guys that are promoting uniformitarianism under the guise of ancient aliens, misinterpreting all these day count and lunar-based calendars to promote an Atlantis as 9,600 years BC when it was the 13th century BC, and it's easily known, it's easily shown, and I don't have to take any modern material. I can cite all ancient sources to show this. So Gaia doesn't promote any old books, any old libraries, any old sources. Gaia promotes all modern authors. So it tells me right there. Am I mistaken? You tell me. Tell me in the comments section right now. What do you think? Is Gaia a shill network just trying to make some money off your lack of information? Or are they legitimately trying to educate people on the truth? You tell me. Because if they're trying to educate people on the truth, and there's a whole lot of Emmanuel Velikovskys out there they're ignoring, Hans Bellamy's. There's a lot of Thor Heyerdahls out there they're ignoring. And sure, yeah, there's nobody in Gaia citing Archaix. Yeah, some people in the Gaia community freely borrow from me, but they're not going to cite me. So they're promoting uniformitarianism, which is the same thing the scientific elite, the establishment does. And you know, uniformitarianism has all kinds of bullshit relative dating methods. I'm going to do a video on relative dating methods just to put this out there because it needs to be done. But carbon-14 and potassium argon and radium and all these dendrochronology and ice core dating, it's all BS. Every bit of it's BS. It's been proven to be BS, and there's some really good books out there that completely collapse every single one of these dating systems. And yet these are used. Get this now. The truther, Graham Hancock. Oh, wait a minute. The alt media hero, Andrew Collins, Rand Flimath, Robert Schoch, Robert Bauval. Imagine that. Every single one of them in their books quote uniformitarian relative dating methods. How is that? How can you sit there and try to call yourself to be a truther and a catastrophist when all you do is use uniformitarian models? I don't even get it. The duplicity kills me. Well, the flash freezing of the entire world is not anything you're ever going to hear about in Gaia. It's not. The whole vapor canopy cycle that I have brought to the table, I didn't even invent vapor canopy. There's scientists that have written books about it. The vapor canopy cycle overturns Ice Age theory. Ice Age has never worked. Scientists themselves can't even agree on how the mechanism even happens. And then, to add insult to injury, Mr. Hancock and several others in their books cite the maps. The Uranus Phineas map. I can't pronounce it, and I don't even give a damn how to pronounce it. The Zeno Brothers map, the Piri Reis map, as if bringing that to your attention all of a sudden answers the mystery. But the real mystery is those maps don't show ice where there's supposed to be ice. There's 2-mile high ice caps everywhere those maps show today, but not on the maps. How's that possible? How can you use this for evidence of any of your theories? It's almost as if soft disclosure of showing the maps in his books, Hancock and all his little crony followers, and somehow ameliorates the fact that the maps themselves disprove your Ice Age dating. Yeah, these maps are only 500 years old. Name one single human artifact made of wood, paper, or anything that has survived from 10,000 BC. I'll wait. I'm not going to wait in this video, but I'll wait for you to find me one. Yeah. Those maps are not copies of 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 copies of. No, they're not. Those maps were recently made because there was no ice on Antarctica, no ice, Baffin Island, no ice in southern tips of Patagonia. There's nothing. No ice in Greenland. It wasn't there. That's why they mapped all the valleys, mountains, and rivers and coastlines accurately. Those maps proved your Ice Age theory is BS. Vapor canopy answers for how those maps could have been made and how that ice got there today, and it happens rapidly. It might take 10, 15 years for a vapor canopy to develop. It might develop through volcanism very fast. I don't know. But when it collapses, it's instant. And when it does, all that moisture trapped in the mesosphere collapses as rain in the temperate areas. And then in the torrid zones toward the polar regions, it flash freezes. And it does it quickly. So it's the usage of uniformitarian dating models and the ignoring of anachronisms that have all these people dating Göbekli Tepe to that. I've got 3 or 4 videos on Göbekli Tepe. I'm tired of talking about it. But those bird cult effigies, burying the skulls underneath the homes, the sigils of the bull cult, the goddess cult. Yeah, the Kiva style open baths, the unique architecture, the anthropoid squarish pillars with folded long fingers over the corners. They're identical to what we find at Tiwanaku, Easter Island, in the southern Pacific hemisphere. They're identical to architecture from the 26th century to the year 2000 BC. There's no need to put them at 8,000, 9,000, and 10,000 BC. It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. But this is what you get from the Gaia community. Guess what you don't get from the Gaia community? How can you ignore? How is it possible to ignore the sheer amount of data that I have brought to the table on the Phoenix phenomenon, on all these events every 138 years apart? How is it possible to hold yourself up as a pillar of the truther community, Gaia, and yet ignore what this ex-con over here did, reading from old books over a 20-year period? How do you ignore that? You can't, unless it's deliberate. There is no way that the Phoenix phenomenon, the Phoenix cycles, could ever be entertained by Gaia, because the entire Phoenix corpus of data overturns almost every historical theory that Gaia possesses. That's why they ignore it. That's exactly why they ignore it. How do you ignore? Why doesn't, if Gaia wants to be some herald of the truth, how do you ignore one of the greatest cataclysms of all history, the Ogaigian deluge, which some historians said was worse than the flood of Noah? How do you ignore? W.J. Perry's Children of the Sun book was 551 pages concerning nothing but that one cataclysm that ended every dynasty in the entire world, changed the whole world. We went from Technolithic to Heliolithic to post-Heliolithic architecture. How do you ignore it? You ignore it in Gaia because to entertain it would overturn a bunch of your ancient aliens narratives. Yeah. It only takes us 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. We don't need ancient aliens. We've never had ancient aliens here, and the Fermi paradox still stands. The Fermi paradox and the dichotomy paradox are all we need to know, that we live in a construct and not an actual world. This is an experience. It's not actually, it's actually tangible. It's only experienced through the medium of the 5 senses. This is all simulated, every bit of it. But Gaia really can't afford to entertain simulation theory, but only to a theoretical extent. It can't actually provide really good proof for it. And the reason is because it overturns a bunch of the stuff Gaia promotes. It's not going to work. But how do you ignore the Phoenix cycles? How do you ignore all this immense material? Yeah, people who follow Archaix are not uneducated. As a matter of fact, they're more educated than those who follow a lot of other content creators. Because in Archaix, I have to show you the materials. In Archaix, I have to prove my point. I'm very often when I'm bringing something new to the thesis, did I make my case? Is what I ask you guys in the comment section. Did I make my case? Because I have a habit of overwhelming people with data, and I want people to understand. Listen, man, you're getting all this from multiple different sources. I said, this isn't me making this up. I'm finding all this stuff in old books, and it's totally ignored by these large truther networks like Gaia. Totally ignored. by ancient aliens. They have to ignore a bunch of the Archaix material because it totally collapses the whole ancient aliens narrative. It's crazy. The old day count, moon count systems, accurately interpreting the Shar and the Egyptian lunar year is completely avoided in Gaia because they're steadily promoting the Golden Dawn version of Atlantis 9600 BC. Same thing that Graham Hancock was basically, told to do. Yeah, I believe he's a stool pigeon. I don't believe that man's even near as intelligent or near as smart. I don't believe he can hold himself in a debate. I don't believe anything Graham Hancock comes out of his mouth. I just don't believe it. I believe that he was given a CIA script. He was told, "Hey man, this is what you're gonna do, man. We're gonna build your career for you. Here's your assignment. You need to push this everywhere. And every content creator out there, get on their channel, talk about it and all that shit." What they probably didn't expect was an ex-con getting out of Texas prison and going on the attack. That's probably, they never saw me coming. But I'm not going anywhere because it's all BS. They can run from debate all they want. I don't care. It's all BS. It's all BS. Man, it's hot out here, guys. It is hot out here. Another thing that people of Gaia do not want to hear is about how young the solar zodiac is. Yeah, references to zodiacs. I mean, I have a whole list. I'm going to do another video on it. I know it's unpopular. I still got to do it. I can't go by public opinion on my presentations. I'm going to do another video on PhD laureates and PhD, videos by qualified alumni who have all done research on the zodiac, and they all agree zodiac's not old. There's no evidence of the solar zodiac going back beyond the 5th century BC. It just doesn't exist, and there's a reason for that. I mean, look at the sky. It's a blue sky. It's full of clouds. What the hell what advantage would a solar zodiac be? It is a later imposition created after some certain event occurred in 713 BC. You'll have to know Manuel Velikovsky to know what happened. But it totally changed our way of viewing time. Lunar zodiacs are ancient. They go back 4,000 and 5,000 years. Lunar zodiacs are the zodiacs of the ancient world. That's why the constellations are different. They're very different. Lunar zodiacs make sense because you watch where the wanderers, which we call planets, and you watch where Luna, the moon, the goddess, travels while she exhibits her various crescents and horns across the starry scape of the sky. At nighttime, a lunar zodiac makes sense because you watch the moon and you watch Mars and Venus and Jupiter where they go across the band of the sky. A lunar zodiac has always made sense. A solar zodiac was a recent imposition into the field. Jason's not telling you this. I've cited in 3 different videos all the sources that show you. This isn't me telling you. These are Vedic scholars, Greek scholars, Italian scholars, even cardinals. I've quoted cardinals. Even recently I quoted a modern astronomy book by a qualified astrologer who a lot of people follow, apparently. And he even says 5th century BC. Even Babylonian solar astrology is 5th century BC. And it's all because of an event that's mentioned by Emanuel Velikovsky when the sun stood still in the sky. And then it went backward 10 degrees before it continued on its course. And the year changed from 360 days a year to 365. It's very compelling because this was 713 BC, which was the end and closure of the 6th Bacton of the Mayan long count. Exactly. It was 864,000 turnings of the stars since the Mayan long count began. Why is this critical? It's because the Mayan long count is about the changing of time. How do we know? Because Mayan prophecy says at the end of the 13th Bacton, the 13 heavens will collapse. The prisoners of the 13 hells will be released onto the surface and time will collapse. What does it mean for time to collapse? It means your calendar will no longer be good because the motions of the sky and stars is going to be different. This is exactly what we find in the book of Revelation. 1/3 of the day, 1/3 of the night, 1/3 of the moon, 1/3 of the stars, 1/3 of the sky. Day, night, sun, moon, and stars. There's 5 different things that are all elucidated in the book of Revelation that will be reduced by 1/3, meaning that there will be 66.6% left. This is the collapse of time. In the book of Revelation, it's called the second trumpet judgment. It is 2 judgments after the sixth seal apocalypse of the sky, sun darkening and pole shift that will be caused by the Phoenix in May of 2040. In 2046, at the return of Nemesis X object, the fairy, Earth will be pushed out of her place. This is ancient prophecy. And in Book of Revelation, time will collapse, just like the Maya said, because the Mayan long count, as we show in Archaix, ends in 2046. I got a book published way before 2012 that talks all about this. I didn't fall for that 2012 stuff, but Gaia did. All these writers that write for Gaia and have books published by Gaia, do a deep dive on them and see how many of them wrote books about 2012. Nothing happened. Just like Jason said, nothing was going to happen, and it didn't. Yeah, man, it's so. I've been looking into Gaia, and it's not impressive to me at all. It's not impressive to me at all. But on the Mayan long count system of Bactans, each Bactan being 144,000 days, the final 13th Bactan is the 1,872nd day of the Mayan long count, starting in 3113 BC. And because of the solaric anomaly of the sun going backwards in 713 BC, the year changing from 360, which is a Mayan year, to 365.25, which was not recognizable to the Maya. When you refactor the math to what Emmanuel Velikovsky says, the event occurred in 713 BC, and biblical chronologist Stephen Jones says when the event occurred in 713 BC. When we do that, the end date for the 13th back in 13.0.0.0.0 is November of 2046. Everything lines up perfectly. But you won't hear about this in Gaia. You won't hear about none of this in Gaia. They avoid that stuff like the plague. There's one more aspect to the Archaix research that has to be ignored as well. If it wasn't Jason of Archaix, and if it would have been Graham Hancock, if it would have been Andrew Collins, if it would have been Robert Bovell, if it would have been Rand Flimath, if it would have been Randall Carlson, who showed in charts that all these measurements in the Great Pyramid are commensurate with 137 point something, which is the fine structure constant, and the solid 138 of the Phoenix number. Showing all these, and then showing how it works in our calendar, 1656 years to the flood, 3895 from Adam and Eve fall of man cataclysm caused by the Phoenix, all the way to the BC AD conjunct of BC1 to AD1. If someone else would have shown that all these measurements were divisible by 138, and oftentimes in multiple dimensions of arithmetic, when you subdivide these measurements by 1.618, which is phi, the golden mean, or pi, 3.1416, these things I've showed on my channel. My Archaix veterans know this is. I'm showing you that the ancients associated the Great Pyramid and the Phoenix. They were also at the same place, Heliopolis. Heliopolis was where the mansion of the Phoenix was, where the Bin stone was kept. The Bin stone was supposed to be the cornerstone that was going to go on the top of the pyramid. The Bin stone was surrounded. The mansion of the Phoenix was filled with Phoenix palms. The Phoenix palms were used for the counting of times. 138 palm leaves was a Phoenix cycle. The ancient Egyptians said that it was a very important 1,656 flood cycle. That's really interesting because 1,656 months is 138 years. If it would have been somebody else who brought this to your attention about Giza and all the associations to 138, that would have had a multi-million-dollar best-selling book. Here's a new discovery about the Great Pyramid. Look at this. Check this out. And then I've done an Antiquitech video on the Great Pyramid. If it had been Graham Hancock showing you the true entrance to the Great Pyramid and not the fake one that they show the public, I'm not talking about the tunnel of Al-Mamon where he tunneled in, but the little square above that starts the descent. That's not the true entrance. The true entrance is above that, where the chevrons are, where they've concreted it up. I got a video showing all that, showing the original pictures of the discovery. Yeah, there's a whole. It's even with the 35th parallel course, which goes straight into the Queen's Chamber. It's even with the Queen's Chamber floor. And I showed original pictures from like 100 years ago where researchers knew that was the original entrance. Why are Egyptologists covering it up today? If Graham Hancock published a book about it, it would have been world famous. Absolutely. Well, I'm not complaining, guys. I'm just showing you that there's a huge rift between what is real and what is imagined. And it looks to me that Gaia is promoting everything that is imagined, and that it wants to make itself look like it's a part of the truther community, when in fact it's using uniformitarian, and it's using scientific and uniformitarian dating models that are used by the scientific establishment to show all kinds of other untrue things like natural selection and evolution. So it's most interesting. You know what you're not going to hear about in Gaia? You're not going to hear about Tartaria in Gaia. Now, I'm not really big into the Tartarian movement. I've kind of avoided it. But when I did one single Tartaria video, it did kind of shock me to find out that in the historical record we have Genghis Khan, who was a Caucasian, and his men were all Caucasians, and they usurped the authority of the Tatars, who were the most prolific and violent group of the Mongols, and they used the Tatars to gather all the Mongol clans, which were Mongolian. They were Mongoloid. They were Asiatic. And then Genghis Khan got all these guys together, and after 10 years of infighting among the Mongols, got the whole Mongolian Tartarian Empire together. Once the unification was complete, it took 10 years. He started in 1202. It took 10 years to build Mongolia as a nation instead of just a bunch of warring factions. In the 10th year, Tartaria is officially recognized on maps in the year 1212 AD. It blew my mind, because 1212 AD is on the Phoenix timeline of 138 years. 138 years out all the way to 2040. Then what blew my mind even further was that the Ottoman Empire, I couldn't believe it, according to these old books that I cited, and I showed the pictures of the old books. I couldn't believe it. The Ottoman Empire, one of the greatest, most expansive, largest empire ever. It was founded by Uthman the Tartarian. And not only that, but Uthman the Tartarian assumed his first regnal year started a 138-year countdown to 1453 AD, when the Turks, the Tartarians, actually realized their dream, which was the conquering and taking of the ancient city of Constantinople, which formerly was a Greek city called Byzantium. When they took Constantinople, they renamed it. In the Muslim occupation, they renamed it to Istanbul. And that's what it's called today. That's my little trek down Tartaria. But you won't hear about Tartaria in the Gaia material. I wonder why. When the Bolsheviks took over Russia by killing the Romanovs, and then after 22, 23 to 26 million white Christian Russians were exterminated by the Jewish Bolsheviks during a 15, 20-year period, one of the things the Bolsheviks did was went through the historical material, went through all the libraries of Russia, and for some reason, they erased Tartaria. They went through and they attacked it, and they removed it, or they minimized it. They did a bunch of redactionism on it. Why? You won't hear about that in Gaia. You won't. You also won't hear about the Amazon of the ancient world. Amazon of the ancient world. You're not going to hear about that in Gaia. The Great Wall of China wasn't even Chinese, come to find out. It was Roman. Martin Leakey and I did a video on that, and Max Egan followed it up and found out even more proof. Put it on his BitChute channel. Gotta love Max. Yeah, man. None of that's in Gaia. You're gonna get a really watered down, sanitized version of the truth that's mixed with so much fiction. There's nothing. It has no value. That's what you get from Gaia. That's what you get from Gaia. I just don't get it. So I just wanted to bring these things to your attention, what's on my mind. You have a video on uniformitarian dating methods coming, along with that whole list of videos I said the other day. But I'm going antiquing tomorrow. There's some antique warehouses I'm gonna go check out. Cipher. I got a few more people joined in. I'm gonna let you know. But listen, man, I understand. I understand your frustration and all that, but I have an obligation to my community. Yeah, you got 7 more days to join. After that, don't even ask. Don't even email. You got 7 more days to join, because beginning next month, first day of next month, doors locked, because I'll be selecting a team. I'll be putting a team together in the Cipher community. There's like 240 of us in there now, and we will be doing the NFL predictions, and different team members are going to have different assignments. And this is good. This is big. What we're doing is big, and we're going to use the latest iteration of the software, which is very user friendly, sophisticated, and we're gonna run with it. But that's what people signed up for. I'm doing a tutorial too on personal predictions and on business predictions. I'm doing a tutorial as soon as I get back from Galveston. I'll be doing that, but that's only for the Cipher group community, because they're the only ones that have access to the software. But other than that, reawaken the immortal within. The link is in the description box, and I will go ahead. I know what, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to Awaken, because a lot of you have emailed me in the past 4 days. You read the new Reawaken the Immortal Within, and now you want the Awaken, but for some reason you can't find it. I don't know why. On my website, you just go to books. I'll put the link to Awaken the Immortal Within, the PDF download, and the book tree. You can also order the paperback. But Reawaken the Immortal Within is not a paperback yet. It won't be for a while. It's just a PDF download. It's still valuable. Yeah, it's hot. I'm about to meet Dad for lunch. How hard, you guys? These things were on my mind. It's just, there is a huge gap. Mainstream is now adopting many of the things. Many of the pioneers, like David Icke, were telling us 20 years ago, they're true today. Many of the things that Jason of Archaix was telling you 5 years ago are true today. And they're so true that it's been absolutely forgotten that it was David Icke that was telling us, or it was Jason that was telling you. And we're not the only two. There's been many people who have been trailblazers. And it's crazy that mainstream's picking up these things. Are they going to cite us? Are they going to give us credit? No, they're not going to give us credit. It's never going to happen. But it's okay, because our communities are solid, and that's all that counts. Because in the end, we're not looking for large communities of people that are basically ignorant. I value the Archaix community, because my analytics show that my engagement on my channel is off the charts. It's off the charts. To get so many people in live videos and active engagement, to get so many comments per video, and compared to the numbers that I have, it's off the charts. So I'm glad for that, because I will always value substance. I'll always value substance over quantity.